Uh, cool. So I'm Cory. Some of you know me. And yeah, I'm going to talk about building one-person businesses with Django, which is what I do. A lot of this does apply to multi-person businesses. So if you have a multi-person business, hopefully you're not scared away. There we go. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start with a question for you all, which is like, are you more interested in the business side of stuff, or are you more interested in the code side of stuff? Because like it's a Django meetup, but then the topic is sort of businessy. So it's kind of like I wasn't sure which area to focus on more or less. I don't know. Show of hand. Okay, raise your hand for business. Okay. Raise your hand for code. Did you vote twice?
I was
Okay.
hoping to know how you solve your business challenges with the code.
Yeah, well, that's maybe your first problem. You don't. Well, mostly. Okay, so I'll start just by quickly sharing my story, and then we'll get into stuff. And this is casual. It's a nice small group, so feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, if you want to deep dive on anything. But yeah, so really quick. So yeah, so my job is I run this portfolio of products that is mostly Django based. So the biggest one is this thing called Task Pegasus, what I'll talk about a little bit more. But basically, these are all apps that I run by myself. Many of them, but not all of them, make money. They mostly do it sort of unrelated to how much time or energy I put into them. So I like build up the business. I sort of set up some kind of marketing channel for it, and then it mostly runs itself. Obviously, I have to do support and things like that, make sure the servers stay on. But it's nice because it affords a lot of freedom. Like for the past month, or this entire month, basically, I'm traveling with my family. I didn't like have to ask anyone for time off. I'm like this is like the most work I'm going to do in the entire month. So it's a nice lifestyle. I recommend it to a lot of people. And so in terms of how I got here, so I started off working in a job that was almost exactly like the movie Office Space, if you all have seen that, but it was at Oracle. I lasted about a year, and I was just like bored out of my mind the entire time. Then I joined this company, Damagi, who is hosting us, and who a couple of folks in the back have relationships with. And Damagi is where I spent the majority of my early career. It's a really cool company. We make mobile apps for primarily for sort of like low resource, like developing world-ish sort of settings. It's also where I picked up Django, actually, thanks to Dan Myung in the back there. We were evaluating what to build our web platform on, and it was like a bake-off between Rails and Django back when Django was like pre 1.0. Landed on Django, and then I've basically been doing Django ever since. So I was at Damagi for a long time. I was kind of senior. I was the CTO for about 10 years and was not loving how much management and how little coding I was doing and just kind of how stressful it was. And then, so I discovered this website around 2007 called Indie Hackers. How many people have heard of Indie Hackers? Yeah, so basically it was a website where they were just sharing stories about people who were doing kind of like what I do now, just like setting up these little weird businesses. Most of them were like sort of like in the code space, like apps or web apps or something like that. Every once in a while, it was like someone had a cookie business that was like doing, $5 million a year or something like that. But it was every sort of episode of the podcast and the articles back then were all just like someone telling a story of like how they built up these sort of small businesses, and I thought that sounded cool. So I decided to give it a shot, and I built this like little place card making app, which was really silly and kind of dumb. But the idea is basically just like you can make those little things down there. So you can upload a spreadsheet and pick a design, and you download a PDF file, and then you like download it and print it out. Sounds silly, but it started making like, I don't know, like $25,000 a year, which was really exciting. And then I sort of just kept doing it. And then the last thing that I built that's been very successful is this thing called Task Pegasus, which was a little bit meta, but it was basically like a framework to allow you to build more things like Place Card Me. So basically, I tried a bunch of these things and then was like doing it over and over again. I was like, okay, I'm doing this a bunch. Other people probably can do this a bunch. So like maybe I'll just like do it for them, sell them the code base essentially, and then go from there. And so like South Texas today is like pretty big. It's my full-time job. There's like more than 1,000 customers, several of whom are doing like well more than 1 million ARR. There's like Photo Room is like I think it's worth like more than $1 billion now. They didn't start with Pegasus, but they use Pegasus. There's like several big companies. So when I give this talk, like most of this will just be about my own personal experience building these things. A little bit of the technical stuff comes from sort of seeing these, hundreds of projects get off the ground, seeing what works for people, seeing sort of what, what tech stacks people are picking and how they're evaluating them and things like that. Cool. So yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about solopreneurship, which is basically just like running businesses by yourself and like the type of businesses that I'm talking about. So mostly I'm talking about products. So like there you could be a solopreneur, you could be a consultant, you could offer, get a nice hourly rate, live a nice lifestyle. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like building products that make money sort of even when you're sleeping. I'm also talking about mostly something that's monetized. So like lots of people have really cool open source projects, passion projects. I'm more specifically talking about stuff that is designed to make money. Bootstrapped. So like, again, there's this sort of like narrative of like, I'm starting a startup. I'm going to like work on my pitch deck and I'm going to like spend a bunch of time talking to VCs and, I'm not going to actually do any work. But like Bootstrapped is more like you build it, you're scrappy, you don't raise money, you're kind of like trying to be profitable from day one. In my case, it's also kind of calm. Like I value freedom and having my time more than sort of like growing as big as I possibly can. And mostly apps. Obviously, we're at a Django meetup, so hopefully no one was expecting to hear about cookies. And yeah, so a relatively like mainstream term for all of this is called indie hacking because of that website that I mentioned. Was kind of like what put this in sort of like as a thing that people do for a living. So how do you become a solopreneur? So you meet, and this will basically be an outline for the talk. So first, you have to meet the prerequisites, pick an idea, you build it, sell it, scale it, or repeat it. So yeah, so I'm going to kind of go through these in order, starting with the prerequisites. And so, yeah, like what do you guys think you need to get started doing this? Anyone want to throw anything out? Idea? Okay. Savings? Time. Laptop? Yeah. Okay. Some technical. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe credit card could help.
Yeah. I was expecting worse answers, but yeah. So you almost need nothing, and like really what you need some skills probably, or at least like the willingness to learn. You need discipline because you're not going to have someone telling you what to do or watching the clock or anything like that. Ability to learn, I can guarantee you that like no matter, unless you've already like founded a company, like you're gonna have to learn something because like to do this, you have to blend technical skills with non-technical skills that nobody necessarily has all of those. Time and energy was, I think, probably the most important one. I forget who said that. And so money, like you don't really need that much money, I would say, if you can find the time and energy. I think what money does is it allows you to have time and energy. So you can, for example, you could take time off from your job and like go full time. So if you're like 22 and you can work an 8-hour day and then spend, 5 hours at night building an app, like you probably don't need much money. And you definitely don't need much money to like sort of host your apps or, buy ads or anything like that. You do need money if you don't have the time and energy within the context of a day job to actually do this, which I did. So I did have some money that I could pay off. And then like persistence, I think is probably the most important one. And so this guy, Cortland Allen, he's the founder of Indie Hackers. And his whole thing, like after like interviewing like thousands of people about how they do this, is like the one thing he took away from all those conversations was just like the ones who are successful are the ones who didn't quit. And so like what you want to really, like you need to be persistent and you need to optimize for just like not giving up when it seems like things aren't working, which it will seem that way for a long time, probably, unless you get very lucky. So this was kind of how I did it, back to that like time and money thing. So this is like my income broken down by yellow is my product income. This goes up to 2022, and then I kind of stopped sharing this publicly. And then, so basically what it is, I went down to 50% time at Demagi. So that's why the blue kind of gets cut in half. And then I just supplemented my time with like pretty high income consulting. So I could charge like, you know, $200 an hour, which was like way more than I was making at my Demagi salary. And that was, I also moved to South Africa. So cost of living is quite cheap. And then basically I kind of did that and then scaled down the consulting as the income from my products started coming. And then eventually the products were doing well enough that I could drop down to basically as an advisor to Demagi, which I still am. But there's like a tiny little blue slice there. And yeah, and I stopped doing consulting as of like sort of the last 2 years. And now I'm just living off the product. I am, yeah. Okay. So picking an idea. So this is called the stair step approach by a guy named Rob Walling, who he has a podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us, and he runs a program called Microcomp and Tiny Seed, which like sort of funds companies in this space. But basically, this is a little old. This language is a little dated here. But I think the steps are still pretty reasonable. And so like step one is just like find like a small thing that's working, that's not too hard and making a bit of money, essentially. Step two is just kind of like repeat that over and over again until you're sort of earning enough. And then step three is maybe like scale out something bigger and harder. And I think like for the purposes of this talk, I'm going to assume that we're mostly going to be interested in like the sort of the step one stages, because that's kind of like where you would want to get started. And so you want to kind of pick something easy. Well, actually, I think I have, well, yeah. Basically, like, I think what I did and what I recommend is starting small. And so like your ideal first product should be easy to build, easy to support, easy to sell, ideally. Not easy to sell is probably the hardest of these. And like these ideas are very different from like the type of things you would hear on like, you know, like Shark Tank, or if you were like pitching a VC or something. Like you probably like want a niche thing. Like if you're like picking some, you know, something that could sound like a unicorn, then it's not a good fit for this lifestyle. Like those your competitors then will be like other people with the same idea, but they've raised like, you know, $50 million, and you don't want to be competing with people who've raised $50 million. So you want to like start with something small, niche, easy, and then just sort of like go from there. And it's a much sort of easier pathway. So like Place Card Me, for example, this app that I made to build place cards is like I built the whole thing in a week, basically. So it was, it was very easy. This is like basically the entire app. So you can pick a design, you can like set some fonts, but like it's a very, very simple app. It's easy to support. It didn't take a lot of time to sort of like get the UX good enough. And because it was a thing that I was just, at the time I was just selling it like for $5, like that's a very low stakes purchase for someone. So I could actually, people would just like start paying for it because it wasn't something I was trying to, it wasn't like a SaaS. I was asking people to, give me $50 a month for the rest of their lives. So yeah, so this was a good example, like I said, like starting small and getting win. And one of the other things I'll say now, I forget if I have this later, but like, I think minimizing the time to like where you get your first dollar is like a really good thing, because that becomes so motivating. And if you go back to like Cortland Allen saying like your only goal is not to quit, like once you start getting $1 or $5 or $10, like you will be so motivated to keep going. Whereas if you just like, if you build in a bubble for a year and never actually get any money, then like it's very easy to give up on something. And then the last thing I'll say about ideas is like validation is really hard. This is a book that I really recommend, which the premise of the book is basically like when you ask someone about your startup idea, the way they're going to answer you is the same way your mom would answer you. So they'll be like, oh, I love that idea, because they don't want you to feel bad. But like, so when you ask someone like, do you think this is a good idea? They'll always say yes, but they're probably lying to you. And so like validating things is really hard. And the only real way to validate something is to get it out into the market and see if people care or if people buy it. So I recommend this book to really like drill that into your head, because it's a useful premise. And then, yeah, like plan for failure. So this is a list of most of the stuff that I've done sort of in the last, I don't know, 11 or 12 years. And like most of it has failed. So like I built a ton of stuff that either went nowhere or like only my friends used it or like, you know, got killed for terms of service violation reasons or whatnot. But like basically like the more shots on goal you have, the more likely you are to like have something that actually works. So and you need to again, going back to the like resilience thing, you need to be able to deal with failure and then move on. So, okay, cool. So that's picking an idea, and I'm happy to answer questions or say more specific things about things. But now I'm going to go into building, and yeah. So I guess another question I'll post is like, why do you think like indie products fail? Why would a product fail? Sorry? I guess I already gave it, yeah. Okay, yeah. So again, I was expecting kind of worse answers, but okay, you guys are good. So, but like, I think it's in a room full of coders, and like often when I'm talking to people who are using Pegasus, like the first thing they want to know is like, oh, what's your code coverage? Like, what's your test coverage? What's your code coverage? Is everything linted properly? And like, I think when people spend a lot of time working in large teams on, you know, aging code bases, they have certain things that they think are very, very important. And in this world, in this criteria, like most of those things are not really important at all. And so, yeah, you guys nailed it basically. But like the reason why these things are going to fail is because like nobody wanted what you were building, or like you didn't market it because you like coding and you aren't willing to like put something out there, or you ran out of, you know, motivation basically. And so like, yeah, so I think the lesson from this is like, when in doubt of like how to build something, well, you should optimize for speed, because like when you optimize for speed, then like it determines how fast you can get to market, how fast you can respond to feedback, how fast you can pivot to something new, and how fast you can move on if like the thing that you built turned out to be a terrible idea. And like, oops, this is that slide. Not supposed to be there. And then, yeah, so like I gave this, I was showing my wife these slides, and she was like, wait, are you saying that like you should just like write terrible code all the time? And I was like, no, it doesn't mean that you ignore quality, because like speed includes maintenance. So like sometimes there will be times where you want to do something the right way, because you know you're going to be working in that code, changing that code over the course of the next, you know, 2 months, 6 months, but you don't know whether you'll be using it 2 years from now. And so like in terms of what this looks like on sort of practical things, like, yeah, so, you know, I'll just pick like tests. I don't know, like you don't care about code coverage, but you do care, like, is this going to help me change the code faster later, or like prevent me from introducing bugs? And so basically you want to take like a very like pragmatic approach to these things, where you're not like building to a metric, you're not necessarily like optimizing something as far as it can go. You just like get everything good enough and then move on to the next thing, because you want to be moving as fast as possible. Okay, so now I'll just kind of like talk about some decisions that I usually make on projects and that I recommend to like people who are building on Pegasus. And I feel like this covers most of what comes up in these things, but if there's any specific thing that you want to talk about that isn't in that list, let me know. I'd be happy to riff on it. But like the first thing I'll say is like, no matter what, and this is very common advice, but like whenever you're choosing technology, your own experience is usually the best metric. So like if there's a thing you love, like use that thing probably. And then after that, popularity is honestly like a decent second best metric, because things that are popular are just, they're going to have bigger communities, they're going to have bigger ecosystems, they're going to have better tooling, better docs, etc. The LLMs will know them better now. So popularity is not usually a bad metric to pick if you don't know. So I assume most of us are using Django on the back end if we're here. So I didn't really think too hard about this slide. Honestly, you could use anything. Like there's perfectly fine frameworks, but I think we all like Django. So I'll just leave that there. So front end, I wrote this like, I've written probably, yeah, about 15,000 words on front end in Django, because it's just like such a mess. There's so many options, and the fact that Django has no opinions about it makes it really hard for people, especially people who are just getting started, to sort of pick something. So you can read all of my nuanced opinions, and if you guys want to talk about nuanced opinions, I'd be happy to get into those. For most people who are doing Django projects now, I recommend this sort of like HTMX Alpine world. But there are definitely like lots of cases where you want to use like React or not sure about Next, but but that's kind of like, it's like really long answer, and then just like if you're just looking for like a takeaway, that's my default recommendation. CSS framework, Tailwind is just like, I don't like, it took me a really long time to like it. It still bugs me sometimes, but it won, and and where that matters the most is there's just like, if you're like me and you're not good at making websites that look good, if you use Tailwind, you can just pick from like tons of these. A lot of these are free open source. Some of them are paid, like Tailwind UI. But you can just get these components out of the box that work great. They look great. They work on mobile. And because Tailwind, that's loud. Like because Tailwind is, the entire markup is in the HTML, you can just like, you can mix and match these. Like you can just paste from any Tailwind component library into your app and it'll just work, because that's how Tailwind works. Like all of the markup is in your HTML. So you don't need to like customize your build pipeline and make sure you like set your colors in the right place. It's like customizing it, everything else is hard. And then Tailwind, you just paste the HTML and it works right out of the box. So I recommend that. Infrastructure, I wasn't going to talk about much, just like I feel like, I don't know, like they all work, but like I think most of us will probably use Postgres as a database. It works well. Redis as a cache, it works well. S3 as like a file store works well, but they're all fine. Deployment, yeah. So I wrote like 6,000 words about deployment, and it was like a third of what I wanted to say. I've deployed apps on like basically every platform as a service and VPS and cloud company that exists, because people on Pegasus all have their favorite things. And like, I don't know, I kind of hate them all, but they all also just kind of work fine. So I don't know. Again, I'd be happy to like talk a lot about this if y'all are interested in talking about this. But yeah, I don't know. It's fine. These are just like third-party packages that I really love. Probably a lot of you are familiar with a lot of these. Allauth is great for like everything to do with authentication. It just gives you like password reset and magic links and two-factor auth and like, all the stuff that like every app with users needs. If you don't use feature flags are like my favorite thing to use when I build apps, and like they're really good for pre-releasing features and for like turning stuff on and off for individual users. And like Waffle is really nice for that. Hijack is really cool. It just lets you like click a button and then you're using someone else's session. So like if you are troubleshooting like a complex bug and you need to do support, and like someone's like, I'm seeing this weird thing, then you just like become them, and then you can see the app how they see your app. And then yeah, I still use Celery and Django REST framework. I don't really love either of them, but they get the job done. And then we were just talking about Django Ninja earlier, but I have my eye on Django Ninja. I'm excited to try it out on a new project. Yeah, again, happy to talk more about any of these. And then this is like some third-party apps that I use. Sentry is like the one thing that I just can't live without. Like if there's one thing that you should put on a production project. I mean, some kind of error monitoring, there are other things, but Sentry is really, really good. And if you're a solopreneur, it's free for like, unless you have crazy amounts of errors. So yeah. Okay. So that was Whirlwind Tour building. Now we're coming to selling. This is kind of like a joke, but I think a lot of developers and maybe like startups, I don't know, think this way. Like they think that like if I build this great app, then these customers are just going to magically appear and find me. And that just doesn't happen. And so it's really sad, because sometimes I see people build really good products, but then they just fail because they don't even really try to market them. Because and it's not in, like, as a developer, it's not in my nature to market. So it's hard. And this for me was the hardest part of this whole thing, was selling and marketing products. So this book, Traction, I recommend. It's a tiny bit dated now, but I got the best takeaway I got from this book was that half your time should be on marketing. So like I think most people think that when you're building an app, you build the app and you spend all your time building the app. And once the app is built, then maybe like try to sell it. But actually, like half of your time should be on marketing, and from the beginning almost. This book also has sort of like 19 or 21 different categories of how you can market your app, and it's useful. Like they cover all this different stuff, from like ads all the way to like going to conferences and like trade shows, all that. So I recommend this book. But yeah, like, so you should sell your product before it's ready. So this is just like, someone bought Pegasus like a week ago or something, and I saw this website and I was like, oh wow, this is like a cool looking company. They didn't have an app at all. Like they bought Pegasus so that they could build their app. And then when you click that sign up now button, it's like give me your email address, which is like when you're marketing a product early on, like that's really all you want to do is get someone's email address. And if you've used the internet in the last 10 years, the reason why like everyone's trying to get your email address is because they all know this. But it's true. It's really useful to get people's email addresses, because then you have a list to tell about your app when it's ready. These are like a few strategies that I have done. A lot of these are probably from that book. But like I said, yeah, your main goal when you're marketing, especially before it's ready, is to build an audience and also to learn. So you kind of also need to do marketing to help validate your idea, because you need to sort of figure out whether your messaging and everything else is working. So I'll talk about a handful of these that I did. So like building in public is kind of just like, it's in this indie hacker space, it's actually become a little bit overdone these days, but basically you just talk about what you're doing. So like when I started this whole thing, I was like, I was a CTO and now I'm not doing anything and I'm gonna like try to build apps. And like I started just like writing this stuff on my blog. A lot of people are doing this on Twitter or X. And like you can find people that are interested in this. Like people are interested in like reading these stories about how people do stuff like this. So this is one way. I would say it's not very effective now. It was more effective when I got started like 7 years ago. But it is a way to sort of just like, especially for me, it was because I wasn't comfortable doing like direct marketing. So this was it was like a very indirect way to do marketing, is I just kind of like felt like I was just kind of sharing my journey. It didn't feel kind of sleazy or anything like that. And it was kind of where I found some of my first users. So it's one thing you can do. Communities are really good still. Reddit is good for this. Like if you're building a niche product, there's probably like 20 subreddits, and you can just go in there and start asking them questions, stuff. You need to be a little careful, because most of these communities get spammed by marketers all the time. So you have to be kind of careful the way that you engage communities. Like I posted to like 4 or 5 like wedding communities, just kind of being like, how do you guys make place cards? And then like, I think in all but one, they immediately like whatever the word is, like black listed the post or took it down, and they were like, you're a spammer, get out of here. So be careful, do it authentically. I can talk more about that also, but communities are very useful, especially for validation. Cold outreach, yeah. So another thing I did when I was getting place card me off the ground is I just like found like 100 wedding bloggers and just emailed all of them and asked them like, what do you think about this idea? And like, blah, blah, blah. Only one ever responded. It was this like budget savvy bride person, which ended up being like incredibly helpful. And many of my first like backlinks, which are very useful from an SEO perspective, came from her. And she sent me, she like gave me designs, and she like sent me some customers. So anyway, like it's awful, but it can be effective. And if you do this, like I would recommend spending like 20 minutes on every email, because everybody's getting these form blasts where it's like, hello, first name, and you know, I think you're cool, whatever. But like the way I got her to respond was like, I read her blog and I was like, oh, I love this thing you said about this one. I forget what it was, but like, and I think I was only able to get this relationship and which ended up being very beneficial for me because I like sent a very good initial cold email to her. Yes, that's the email next, which you guys can see in the slides later. But so I wrote this like long like email with like person. Content and SEO. So before I built Pegasus, I knew that I wanted to build something in the Django space. So I didn't know what it would be, but I knew that if I started building an audience around Django, that would be a useful list to have when I did something related to Django. So I just started writing blog posts about Django. I made a site called Build with Django, which now has been merged into Pegasus. And then like, would write a blog, I'd like post it to like the Django Reddit, whatever, get a handful of email subscribers. But again, like this was how I had, when Pegasus was finally ready, I had like 200 or 300 people to tell, and then like where I found my first customer and stuff like that. And then these days, a lot of the ways that people discover Pegasus is through those super long write-ups that I've done about all this Django stuff. So a lot of my marketing strategy around Pegasus today is essentially like try to publish the best thing on the internet about a specific topic related to Django, eventually become like the #1 Google results. And then like people searching for that stuff will eventually like sort of just like figure out that Pegasus exists. And then like maybe one day I'll get their email address, and then like maybe one day they'll buy it. It's a very slow, long game, but once you get it churning and once you get it working, then it just runs itself, and then you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, and then basically just like repeat and scale it. And so I have tried to build a bunch of other products. A handful are doing okay, but they're not really making a lot of money compared to Pegasus. But this is sort of meant to be like an inspirational slide. It takes a little bit of explanation, but basically, so I religiously track my time. It was a habit that I formed at the Magi. And so on the right, you can see like how much time I've invested in these different products over from 2017 to 2022. And on the left, you can see like how much money they made. And so the point is basically like if you look at Place Garden, I just like stopped working on it, but it just like kept making, $20,000 a year. And then like Pegasus, I worked on it a lot, but like kept going up. And so like my hourly rate over time, which I have like on that, like if you look at it, but like it starts at 0 and then it eventually goes like, slowly creeps up. And then now like if I just looked at like 24 data or something like that, like probably I get paid like an obscene hourly rate for how much time I'm working now. But it just like it takes a really long time, or it took me a really long time to sort of like get that moving long enough, which is why persistence is so important. So, yeah. Okay, I think that's it. So we could chat more about any of that. Oh yeah. Cool. Yeah.
What is the monetization strategy? Did you know of that strategy as you're building the products, how you wanted to sell it? Did that change over time? Because, the SaaS product, like you could charge $10 a month, you could keep bringing in money, but from the sound of it, it sounded like you charged a one-time fee for at least one of your products.
Yeah.
And so that requires you to continuously get new customers, right?
Yeah.
To make money.
Yeah.
You sell it once, then that's it. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You kind of talked about how you bring in new people for your posts and things like that, but short of that, did you think initially like I'm just gonna sell this once and I'll have to sell it more times, or is that your strategy in this?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So first product, 100%, that was my strategy. I was just like, someone give me money, please, and like make it as easy as possible. After that, I started thinking about it's LTV, lifetime value, is the metric that people call it. And so like with Pegasus is kind of expensive, right? Like the highest tier of Pegasus is like $1,000. So no, one-time fee still, yeah. But so if someone pays me $1,000 for Pegasus, like if I had a product that was $50 a month, someone would have to be signed up for 20 months to have the same LTV as one Pegasus customer. So yeah, once I learned a little bit more about monetization, I started thinking about LTV, and that's why I built Pegasus as, I mean, I do like that it's not subscription and that it's high price point. I think there's not that many products in that type of category. Two of the other apps that I didn't really talk about much are subscription based. So I have like a chatbot. Barely a subscription. And like it is really nice. The subscription stuff is really nice because it's much more predictable. But if you can do a one-time sale with a high price points, with a high value, then I think it's probably easier, and that's kind of what I was going for. The other thing about subscription products is to be able to charge a lot, you kind of mostly need to play in the B2B, the business to business space. And if you're building a product for businesses, for the most part, there will probably be like different expectations around uptime, support, all these other things. And like one of my like hard rules was like, I'm never going to build anything where I feel obligated to like wake up in the middle of the night to fix something for someone. And that eliminated like large product categories where if a business needs something to be up, 5 nines of uptime or something like that. So everything I built was always sort of like, okay, if this goes down, it can't be like the end of the world, which is then limiting for how much you can charge businesses and charge for a subscription model.
But so you do need to continue to sell.
Yes, I do.
Because of what happened.
Yeah.
What's to stop someone from just like taking your code?
Not much. But it's not the code that matters.
Right.
Oh yeah, you could literally, so Pegasus, you could almost literally buy Pegasus and resell it.
Yeah, randomly resell it. Yeah.
I could try to sue you,
yeah.
But like technically there's no reason why someone couldn't do something close to that. It's Pegasus is like, it uses Django cookie cutter, or not Django, it uses cookie cutter behind the scenes. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. So you couldn't copy all the branching logic of like when you turn on and off different features in Pegasus. You could only get sort of like one build. So there's a little bit of sort of secret sauce there. But no, the hard thing about Pegasus is the brand. Like the fact that I have that wall of customers that have all said really good things about it. There's all these like there's like glowing reviews everywhere. And one thing I didn't talk about is because it didn't seem like it would be relevant to this audience is like this all changes once you reach a certain scale, like the packet exchange, all the let's see, how does it change? So competition becomes more of a problem, or like more of a thing. Like, so I think when you're first starting, you're sort of like you're growing your awareness. So if you start becoming successful, there's a sort of trajectory of like things will just start going up, and then you kind of like reach a plateau inevitably at some point. You like saturate your current channel, your current marketing channel, or audience, or anything like that. And then two things happen. One is you sort of try to figure out ways to expand. So either expand the scope of what you're doing or try new marketing channels. People raise prices a lot. That's sort of a very easy way to grow your product. And once you are established, you can do stuff like that a little bit more easily. So often, like the reason why I don't know, like incumbents are so bad and expensive is because like they have a brand I'm not saying Pegasus is bad, expensive, by the way. Once you have the brand, like you can kind of play with that stuff a lot more. And then, yeah, competition becomes a bigger thing. Sort of like long-term, like you want different signals, I guess. So like I spend a lot of time now, like getting people to like review Pegasus, for example. Like whenever I have like a good interaction with a customer, I'll just like send them. I'll be like, by the way, if you want to like leave a review, like go over here. And so now when you Google like Pegasus reviews, you'll find like 30 like 5-star reviews, and so a new competitor who pops up won't have that sort of like I don't know, cachet or whatever you want to call it. So I think like positioning yourself as like the best choice or something like that against competition ends up becoming more important. And then also like playing with new ideas. So so one example, so I just recently launched a marketplace within Pegasus, which was what I basically did. Like people were always asking like, okay, I see you have this like starter thing, but like, what does it look like to build an actual app? I was like, oh, well, maybe I could just like sell like an actual app that I've built. Like I've built all these apps, some of them have not gone very far. I did that, and then so now I have like a marketplace on Pegasus where you can like buy built apps, and then like I'm hoping to now open that up to other people in the community so that they can sell their own apps, and then like maybe like build a marketplace-y type thing inside the product. But basically like there's always just like a new thing that you're trying, and it's less about if you're not building new products, if you're sort of like scaling a product, then you're finding sort of either new distribution channels, new income streams, new ways to make the thing better, but like just trying to like expand. And I guess I don't know. I feel like that wasn't a very good answer. Yeah.
We want to be making money, hopefully passive as much as possible, but somewhat active. And as you mentioned, you don't want to be on the hook 24/7 if there's a problem.
Yeah.
You want to be able to go off in the jungle for 2 weeks, or whatever you do in your life, and not be worrying about your business, someone's paying, whatever. So do you put it in your terms of service? How do you mitigate that? How do you give yourself a calm life running these businesses?
Yeah. A lot of it is like stakes. So like place cards is a very low stakes thing. Like if my place card app doesn't work, then they'll figure out another way to make place cards. So like it is like I did actually like I went to Namibia and I was offline for like a week, and my hosting company like had some random thing and it rebooted and it didn't come up cleanly. So my place card app was down for like a week, and I lost, I don't know, a few $100s worth of revenue or something like that. But it was fine, like, and with Pegasus, like, it's code. So like no one's production app is gonna hopefully like be on fire because of something in Pegasus. Like the type of support that I have for Pegasus is like, I'm having an issue with this piece, or like, how do I do this? But that stuff can wait by and large. The other thing I've done with Pegasus is there's like a 1,000-person Slack community of people who are using it, and I will tell them, like they know this month I'm not around, and they're answering each other's questions a lot more and like helping each other out. So I think communities are a very useful way to scale support if it works with, obviously some types of products won't have, like if the server's down and you have the keys to the server, then like that's gonna be a problem. But like a lot of support type stuff can scale if you can successfully build a community, which was a priority for Pegasus from sort of like day one.
Do you have the keys to the server, or does the customer have the keys to the server?
The customer has keys to the server.
So like if the database.
Well, if like saaspegasus.com crashes, I have those keys. But like all the apps that have been built on top of Pegasus are they're just Django code bases that people deploy on their own servers.
So they manage their own infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have thought about building a deployment product. That's one of those sort of like scale ideas that I.
Then you're on the hook.
Well, what I would like to do is like, we're getting in the weeds, but like I would like to do like a bring your own infrastructure, and then I just handle the pushes essentially. And then so I'm still not on the hook.
Yeah.
Or at least if it's not working, then it's just the pushes that aren't working, which is much smaller.
Do you put it, follow up, do you put anything in your terms of service that you might disappear for a month?
No. And I do keep tabs. I keep tabs on my email and stuff. Like I'm not. I'll go on like 3 or 4 day camping trips, but I'm not actually offline for a month straight ever.
Your terms probably say what you're responsible for, or you solve a problem. So it's just not a problem, right?
Well, I mean, talk about like moving quickly. I mean, my terms were like copy pasted from some. So whatever those terms say is what my terms say.
Probably
But
say
it's-
that.
Yeah.
Responsible for
Hopefully.
anything,
Yeah. I mean, there is like I think they say I'm not responsible for anything, right?
Yeah,
It's like limit of liability or something.
Do you have any tips on coming up with the kinds of ideas that people are comfortable spending money on? Because I know a lot of times when I'm looking for things, I find things that's like, I would be willing to spend money on this, but in order to make money off of it, they have attached strings to it that I'm unwilling to pay for it now. Or it's like, I would be happily spending money for this as a one-time transaction, but you insist on making a subscription and I refuse. So like, there's a lot of things like I have resistance to pay money for something because they've done something in order to try to make money off of it. Whereas I'm happy to give them money, they just didn't give those strings there.
Yeah.
So give an idea like how to find the kinds of things people are like, yeah, I'll just spend money on that and I'm happy about it.
I mean, I think stuff that you see as a product you wish existed and you can't find the right. I think that's a great place to start. And the key there is to figure out as quickly as possible whether there's other people like you or not. But you know, like Paul Graham's essays are like way better at talking about this stuff than I'll be. But like, you know, one of the things is always just like solve your own problem. And so I think that's a great place to start. Not only because you know there's at least one person that wants it, but also because so much of the product decisions are much easier if you understand the problem well, versus if you just try to like say like, oh, I'm gonna build something for realtors just because you think that's like a good market or something like that. But then you like almost need like consultants or target customers or something to like tell you what to do. Whereas if you're building for yourself, then you can be sort of your own first user. Another tactic I think is good is to like there's a joke that like, let's see, you want to start a startup, you have a good idea, you work on the idea, you run into a problem, you fix that problem. That second thing is the actual startup. So like just through the process of trying something, you'll like run into something else, and that thing you run into is probably like maybe the more likely to be the generalizable thing that other people run into.
I think Slack was founded that.
Yeah, well, Slack was a video game
It was a
company.
video game.
Yeah.
Flickr too.
Yeah.
You talked about getting user feedback and that kind of problem with it. I'm wondering what, in your experience, that actually looked like. Like,
Yeah.
there were visuals. Did you just kind of talk to them? Like,
So early on with both PlaceCard Me and Pegasus, actually, like every time someone used it, I would send them like a personalized email, because I was getting like, in the early days I was getting like 1 sign up a week or something like that. So I would send them like a personalized email. I'd be like, hey, like creepy level of detail about what they've done, and then like be like, do you have any feedback? Do you want to like jump on a call? And so I think very very aggressively trying to like, I mean, this is another Paul Graham meme, I think, but like talk to your customers, talk to your users, and you definitely have time in the early days because it's not like you're getting inundated with traffic. So like any opportunity that like you've gotten someone's email address and they've like shown interest in your product, especially super early on, like I tried very hard to reach those people. And then I basically did that until I stopped learning much from those exchanges. And then I automated that outreach so that they could still kind of like follow up, but it was more obvious that it wasn't like a personal thing, and I didn't do any work anymore. But like, if you sign up for Pegasus today, or if you buy Pegasus today, you'll still get like an email from me being like, "Hey, I'm Cory. You want to like tell me what you're up to? How'd you find out about this? Blah blah blah." But like, I used to personalize every single one of those.
were there ways you kind of prompted them to talk more? I mean, Yeah.
Yeah. The book talks a lot about it. I mean, before you have something, the easiest one is like, will you give me money? Essentially, like, will you prepay for this? Like, I don't have it ready yet. Will you buy it? Once you're actually selling something, like, the signal's pretty clear because either they're going to buy or not in terms of like whether it's providing value. I would ask I give refunds, and it's basically no questions asked. The only thing is you have to tell me why you want a refund, essentially. So that's like a source of feedback of sort of like failed customers or failed interactions. But yeah, I don't know. Did that answer? Yeah.
In terms of like the day-to-day metrics, or when you are sort of like looking at the performance of a business, right? What are like the top 5 metrics?
Oh, well, I mean, I mean, if the business is already making money, then it's just looking at Stripe every day. Like, it's just how much money it's making, and then traffic, and then beyond that, I'm not very good at metrics, and I think it's one of those things that can change at scale. Like, it's entirely possible that if I spent a week optimizing my funnel, that would be like a non-trivial change into how much money I make, and maybe I should do that. I'm not sure. But mostly for sort of that type of stuff, I'm still sort of just going on gut feel. So I think metrics are useful for sure, but for me, the thing is just top line traffic and top line revenue, and then like if one of those two goes down, I try to figure out what happens and fix it. Yeah, I don't know. It might be like, I think these things are different when things don't go well. So, so PlaceCardMe has now like, it peaked around like $20,000, $25,000, and then it like went in half. And I figured out basically like, I lost the top Google result for like a bunch of queries to Canva. Like, Canva started making all these dedicated landing pages for like place cards and place card templates and all this stuff. And so like pretty much overnight, like something caused them to outrank me, and then just like my revenue dropped in half. And I was like, do I want to like fight that, or do I want to just like let it die, slow down? And I'm still kind of like debating that, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, that's the type of thing. That's the type of level that I have visibility into it. It's not like, oh, I like A/B tested the color of this button, and now like I have a 0.05% higher conversion rate type of thing. Yeah.
I actually have 2 questions. First, you're a sole owner, right? Like,
Pretty.
do you have any co-founders?
No co-founders. I have a friend who works with me kind of like one day a week. So we kind of like collaborate, but he's more of a contractor than he's a contractor.
And he's like a tech side or a business side?
He's a tech side, yeah.
Okay.
I probably, honestly, I should have hired a business side, but I wanted to work with him, so no.
I'm curious now, like, as a tech founder, like, what would you be looking for in a co-founder if you ever wanted one?
Someone who could market and like reach people. Like, so talking about PlaceCardMe again, like, if someone could just like work with me to like if I didn't have to do anything and someone could figure out how to get PlaceCardMe back to #1 on Google search, or like, I would very happily just like pay them. Like, yeah, I could pay them money, or we could just like split the profits that were, but yeah, like, I think from just being able to prove like, oh, I know how to reach people, I can improve your search traffic, or I can get people talking about you on these blogs or on these news sites, whatever the thing is, like marketing basically would be the thing that I would be looking for.
Okay, sounds good. And the second question is about competition. So you talked about like before starting an idea, looking if there's another one already in the market. Do you think this is good or bad? Like, if I found another one in the market, is it good for data so I that because now having no competition, I need to work more on my products.
Are you saying competition when you enter a market or competition?
Yeah, exactly.
Competition when you enter a market is good, I think. If there's no competition, there's probably a reason. So it's more likely to be a bad idea for reasons that you don't understand. That's not always true, but that's a pretty good default rule. I think some competition is good for sure. You don't want so I mentioned I have this chatbot app that I run. I pretty quickly decided to stop doing it because every day I would find out about a new company that had just raised $35 million to build a competing product. And I was like, okay, like this is not a space that I want to be playing in. So like I'm not going to focus on this chatbot thing. I'm just going to like stay in my lane. But so I think some competition is good, but you don't want like gorillas and you're like this tiny little bug on the ground, you know? But I think no competition, it could be great, but you should figure out why there's no competition. And it might be because there's some flaw in the idea. And then competitors coming behind you, it sucks. Like it's not fun. But it's also inevitable if you build something that is successful. So you kind of just have to deal with it, try to maintain your position as sort of like the best or market leader or whatever else.
Follow up to that, when you're entering something, what do you compete on?
I mean, I think the biggest asset that you can compete on as like an indie solopreneur thing is like really leaning into like speed and like sort of like customer service. And so like could you imagine if you emailed Google and you're like, I hate how you remove the snooze button from Gmail, like please put it back. And then someone was just like, oh yeah, I just like added that back for you, like overnight, you know? Like you have the power to do that to people. And when you have an interaction like that, or so I mentioned Sentry, like anytime someone encounters like a thing in my Sentry, I'll proactively email them and I'll be like, hey, I saw you like ran into this bug. I understand what it was. Here's what happened. I just fixed it. It should work now, like that type of thing. And that's like a good opportunity to just create like an advocate for basically like the rest of their life. Like they'll be like, oh my God, this company has like incredible support. I thought I was like emailing a black hole and like this guy got back to me instantly and fixed it. Like, so I think that's like your number one asset. Price also, usually as companies grow, they get more and more expensive. They have bigger teams and blah, blah, blah. And so you can often enter a market by competing on price. All of my competitors are cheaper than me. And I think that's not a coincidence. Yeah.
Have you been asked to sell or like tiny capital or like?
I've definitely had, I've had several investment inquiries, and many people have offered to buy PlaceCardMe, never at prices that I care about. It's like, I didn't, it's not hooked up, but like, I probably spent like 10 hours on PlaceCardMe in the last year. And so like people think they're offering me a good deal by offering me like 2 or 3 annual run rates. So like, let's say it's making like $10,000, so like I'll give you $30,000 for it. They don't realize that like, I'm not spending any effort running it. So like, if I think it's gonna make that much money over the course of the next 10 years, then it's like still in my best interest to keep it, basically. And no one's ever offered to acquire Pegasus. I think they probably know I would never sell it at this stage.
What was in your mind when you were going from consulting, getting paid well by the hour, to speculative making SaaSes? How do you get over that? Where here's guaranteed money, I spend my hour, I get my money, versus I'm going to do this and maybe it will turn into something?
Well, it was really easy because I was always doing both. So it was like, consulting was basically just like a money faucet that I could turn on and off. So like when I needed money, I would turn it on, I'd do a little more consulting. But I was always working on stuff in parallel. So it was basically like, I consulted when I felt like I needed money. And then when I felt like things were going well, or I was like really in rhythm, like excited building something, then I just like turned down everything. And it was nice because I had a big enough network that people kind of trusted me. So it was very easy for me to find consulting work pretty even today, I'm sure I could just like, I could email one of many people and they'd like hire me on the spot. So it's, having that built up from my time at Tamagi was very useful.
So there was no problem with motivation either way, you had plenty of energy.
Well, it was always 8 hours a day. So there was never a time where I was like doing more. I mean, honestly, I probably maxed out consulting at like consulting plus working at Tamagi probably maxed out around 80% of my time. So I always had like at least one day a week to do other stuff.
So what's your pitch on SaaS Pegasus? I was actually looking at using it potentially, but I was thinking of your trade-off, like how fast to move versus,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of stuff out of box, but maybe it gets you way down. So how do you think about that? Choosing? Yeah, that's a tough question, probably.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the idea of like pitching Pegasus in this environment. I will say like it will help you move much faster because like a whole bunch of stuff is already built. And like, I mean, like I've invested, I should move the slide. Like I've invested, I don't know, 650 times, so that's like, call that 2,000. That's another it's probably even more. So like I've invested like, and half of that's probably been on marketing. So call it 2,000 hours building this code base. Like that's a lot of bugs that have been fixed. That's a lot of like things that have been improved. That's a lot of features that have been built. Like, so like I think you could obviously build everything in Pegasus by yourself. I think it would take longer than you'd expect, and you'd do it worse than I have over the course of the last like 7 years. I don't know if that is a succinct answer, but yeah. And it's like with Pegasus, I am trying to be both. Like I'm trying to be like fast and good, and so like I do make decisions that are more optimized for speed than say for scaling to like 1 billion users. You know, like I think there are people who will like they email me out of the gate and they're like, you know, I want to do microservices on Lambda or whatever the thing is, and I'm like, okay, that's not what Pegasus is for. Like Pegasus is like a monolith that's going to be faster as you're building your app. Maybe you'll need microservices when you're like a 2,000 person company, and then you'll like refactor your code that, and like, but so yeah, I try to follow that sort of like get people to sort of MVP as quickly as possible, but also in a way that's set up to take you way past that.
What's the coolest thing you've seen built on SaaS Pegasus?
Oh man. I mean, one of my first customers was really cool. It's a company called Savvy Learning. And it was right during COVID. This guy was like working at a university or something, but like so all the schools shut down, and he immediately saw like there was going to be this huge need for online learning, and then bought Pegasus, and in I think like 3 weeks, basically spun up this online tutoring thing with a thing called Big Blue Button, which is like a open source version of Zoom, essentially, and then like set up these virtual classrooms and whatever else. And his wife was like good friends with like an education influencer, essentially. So they like had this education influencer who was like writing about this thing on their blog, and it just like completely blew up. And they were doing like tons of school lessons and tutoring sessions and stuff during COVID. Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of like really random stuff. Like one guy built an app to like help dungeon masters run their like D&D games, which was fun. People have done, there's a lot of cool stuff. The biggest customer, so the biggest ones, so PhotoRoom, I mentioned, they're a Y Combinator company. I did a short consulting engagement with them, helping them integrate some Pegasus code. They are, I believe they have some biggest X Y Combinator, like fastest to 1 billion valuation maybe or something like that. but so, and they have this like AI photo editing app that's like really, really cool. Pegasus is just like a small part of their product. And then Yoga with Adrienne is like this like gigantic YouTube channel. And they built like an in-house like YouTube analytics platform and like subscriber member management thing on top of it, which is fun. It's always fun when like a big person uses it. There's also like big companies that have bought it, and like I remember what was it? I think it was maybe Akamai. Some like big company bought it, and then they emailed me like they bought like a unlimited license. And then they emailed me a year later, and they were like, "Do we need to pay you like $1,000 every year?" And I was like, "Oh, I really want to say yes." And then I said, no. I know. I was like, oh, like they were getting so much. Like I could have said like, actually it's 10,000, and probably would have been like, yeah, okay, no problem. Like.
For the YC companies, for a company like Akamai, are there any IP issues that they run into?
Yeah, so the YC company was pretty careful about it, which was why they hired me very specifically to like integrate Pegasus code, so that they were basically worried about sort of like, IP issues around that.
Yeah.
The Pegasus terms are, I try to make supportive of that, and like I don't care. Like my rule is basically like, as long as you don't publish the code without my permission, like make it free or like sell the code without my permission.
I don't remember what license is used.
My license, Pegasus license, it's like a proprietary thing, because I can't let you open source it, or like my business would get destroyed. So that's the one. It's a bummer, and it is a bummer when people ask like, oh, I want to like open source this thing, and I'm like, and I can usually work with them to make it happen, but it just requires a little bit of work, because like I don't want someone to go on GitHub and search Pegasus and then like get my thing for free.
So when someone buys a license, you're essentially getting like a non-exclusive ability to use the code for whatever purpose. They can sell it, whatever product they build it, that they can sell it and
Exactly.
not be fearful they're going to come back and say, hey, you're using my code.
Yeah, exactly. But it has come up, and I've been occasionally a company will ask me to sign something. But yeah, most of the types of people who are building on Pegasus, it's not something they're worried about. It's only if they like also have a legal team and stuff, which is not the norm.
Did you do that yourself? Do you have lawyers that you work with?
I just I'm sure it's not fully buttoned up. ChatGPT helps. Yeah.
I'm not sure how applicable this question is for everyone, and honestly, pretty much anyone in sort of probably help you with this, but I'm wondering, or which is to say, question. I'm coming from Django like I've never worked Django in a professional setting or any coding experience, so I've been learning it in order to do a project. And essentially I'm wondering if it might be worthwhile, because in your presentation and a lot of other similar kind of resources, it's a lot of advice to get to MVP really quickly. And I'm wondering if it makes sense, or kind of how much the like full-time paid coding jobs like transfer into like solopreneurship experience, and kind of like would it be worthwhile to kind of tangent to try to get like a full-time junior dev role, for example, before
Yeah.
trying something like this?
I
Does
mean,
that make sense?
yeah, I think so. I think it would. It would depend on the company quite a bit. And so probably the smaller the company, the more applicable it would be, just because you'd probably be kind of wearing more hats. And like in a very big company, you can get siloed into like a very specific thing where you learn you basically learn that company's silo instead of learning how to build apps or whatever it is. So if you want to get into like the solopreneur career direction, I would say like find a startup or like as sort of small a company as you can. But certainly like any production Django project will teach you a lot about how things work, both good and bad potentially. Like I'm sure, you know, no code base is perfect, so you'll learn just as much about what not to do as what to do maybe. Yeah.
On one of the first slides, you said the most important thing is just like sticking with it long enough. Was there a point where you wanted to give up?
I think I got pretty lucky. So not really. Like I've given up on products for sure. But it took about 5 months. So I built PlaceGuard.me in a week. It took about 3 months after that. I had already done some other things that didn't pan out, but like it took about 3 months after that to get my first customer. Just because it was just hard to get traffic to a website early on.
That was 3 months of you intentionally trying to place it.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I stopped working on PlaceGuard.me, this was something that I didn't say in the talk, but I really believe is like, it's important to build one of the things that will help you stay in the game is building something where you're like passionate about the space and like serving customers that you like. And so like when I thought about what I would need to do to grow PlaceGuard.me, it's like I want to just like shoot myself in the head, you know, like I don't. Yeah. Which is not to say that like that's a bad industry or anything like that, but it's just like it's not my. And so, like, there was definitely a point where I was spending a lot of time marketing PlaceGuard.me, hated it. It wasn't working, or it was just taking longer than I wanted. I like treated myself by like building other stuff during that time, just like for fun, basically. It's like, you know, I would like marketing PlaceGuard.me was like eating my vegetables, and then I would like treat myself to like building a new product, like just because like that was like dessert or something like that. But it made money quickly enough. Like that I still had motivation after that 5 months, and then it grew pretty quickly. And just like seeing the numbers go up is just like it's like crack. Like it's just like every time, even now, like when I get a notification on my phone, it's like, oh, you just made $500. I'm just like, yeah, you know, like it's still it like doesn't get old. And so, for as long as things were going well, it was always motivating, and I've been fortunate enough that things have mostly gone well.
Were there any like types of marketing activities that either became tiring or like after you tried them, you're like, man, this just feels like weird or something weird?
Well,
I think that's a big problem for developers. Right?
Yeah, well, everything related to PlaceGuard.me, and I think that's really important to like be able to find a way to do it what you want to do authentically. Because I think you could probably do marketing in a way that you hated, but like you might be able to tell that it's just not going well. Or you could hire it, you could outsource it. Writing the guides is a slog, especially because I really do try to make them like the best thing on the internet on a particular topic, which is just like takes way longer than you would expect. So like for me to write every like guide on the Pegasus site, it's probably like somewhere between like 30 and 60 hours of work goes into those. And by the end of that, I'm so tired of the topic, and like, cause I always go in excited, cause I'm like, I just learned this cool thing, I want to talk about it. I'm like, and then I like get into it, and I'm like, wait, how does that work? And then I have to like figure that out, and then it's just like.
These are the general purpose guides.
Yeah, but yeah, because I like writing in general, so content is like my main marketing channel. Like I write stuff. We'll see how long that lasts in the LLM age. But so yeah, so the way I could authentically market is just like to write guides related to my stuff. But like if you go on PlaceGuard.me, like there's guides to like how to make place cards for your wedding, and like I wanted to like shoot myself in the head when I was writing it. there is like stuff you have to do that's just not that fun, and you have to suck it up and do it. Like I said, it's
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, let's give Cory a big round of applause.